Now, maybe we should repeat what we just said for Logan's benefit. Daniel just asked about, well, Esther did too, about initiating action. And I said, like when I did my meeting at the first of the class, I had to vote on whether or not they wanted snacks. That was initiating group action. And then after we voted, I passed out pieces of paper and had them make suggestions for snacks. That was initiating group action. Then I put them on the board and had them talk about which ones they liked best. That was initiating group action. And then I had people volunteer to bring snacks. Put that volunteer in quotes in light of the way some of you felt about me letting you volunteer. Had you volunteer to bring some snacks, initiated group action. So it's just a whole bunch of things you do. And that's what you talk about under that section about initiated group action. Okay? Thank you for asking that question. Good morning, Talk. How are you today?
Good morning. Good.
Well, here we are. Did you bring your handout back with the little guy's pictures on it? You got it there? Good. Good. Let's open that up and look at it. And which guy would you be? The guy on the left or the guy on the right? This is the way we should do. This is what we should do about. Are you inclined to walk around saying this is what we should do about things? Or are you the guy on the right who says, I don't know why you would say that. I don't know what you're talking about. I mean, I'm putting myself in the guy on the left saying, this is what we should do about something. And it doesn't matter what it is. It's just a communication process. This is what we should do. And then I jump over to the guy on the right and I say, now see, the guy who wrote the book says, I don't know why you'd say that. See, I don't know why that guy would say, I don't know why you would say that. If someone said to me, this is what we should do, would that be the phrase that would come out of your mouth? I mean, if it is, just go ahead and say so. You won't offend me. We don't have to all see things the same way. What phrase would come out of your mouth if somebody said to you, this is what we should do about da-da-da-da-da-da? Why? Thank you. I'm going to write that one down. I dropped my pencil a while ago and it bounced somewhere and I can't find it. So I'll just write with pen. Why? Why? All right. Now, what would be somebody else's response to that statement? This is what we should do about. How would you respond, Daniel?
Like, it seems like in this, it's like he's not understanding it or something.
Oh, I'm not talking about what this guy in the picture is doing. I'm saying if someone walked up to you and said, Daniel, this is what we should do about da-da-da-da-da-da, what would be your response?
Probably the same as Esther's.
Why? Okay. What would you say, Todd?
Why?
Why? Okay, so you guys are all coming from the same place. You're going to be easy to communicate with once I figure out how to communicate with you, because you're all going to be thinking the same kind of things. I think. You all said the same thing here. See, what about this? Okay, you say to me, you say to me, this is what we should do about da-da-da-da-da-da. Say that to me.
Why?
No, that's what I want you to say. I want you to be the guy on the left. I want you to be the guy on the left. Say that to me.
So this is what we should do about like this.
Are you asking me or are you telling me?
I'm telling you.
Oh, you're telling me what we should do. Okay, because I'm wondering, is he asking for my input about should we do this, or is he just telling me this is what we should do? And so now he said, I'm telling you. Remember, we talked yesterday about should and could. He said, I'm telling you. I said, So what would be your response now? I said, are you asking me for input, or are you telling me what needs to be done here? And he just said, I'm telling you what needs to be done. Then my next question is, so what do you want? Did you want me to do something about it?
Yes.
What do you want me to do about it? You want me to take care of it?
Yeah.
Or were you going to take care of it?
No, you're gonna take care of it.
I'm going to take care of it.
Talks to the boss. You do it.
Talks to the boss, so he's telling me to take care of it. I'm going, okay. Now I'm going to ask what you guys ask. Now, why does this need to be done? Since I'm going to take care of it, and I'm going to go to the people involved, and I'm going to explain it to them, now I kind of need to know why, don't I? If you're just telling me what to do, I can just say, okay, I can do that. No, I think Esther and Daniel are saying, if you're telling me what to do, I'd like to know why you're telling me to do that. Well, see, I come from a different generation. I was taught a little riddle when I was your age and younger. It is not for us to question why. It is just for us to do or die. Asking why wasn't part of the scheme of things when I was younger. Okay, remember when we said this is what you should do as opposed to this is what you could do? And didn't you all kind of, is it, now see if this is an accurate description. You kind of took a little offense at someone telling you what to do instead of suggesting something to do? Okay, maybe not offense. You're more open to people suggesting something than telling you we should do it. Yeah? That's just a change in the world, isn't it? We're just not used to people telling us what we need to do, what we should do, what I want you to do. And sometimes, if you're out in the workplace and you have an older boss, just because you're a product of your culture and the world you live in, and your boss tells you to do something, do you say why? And if he says, have you ever said why to a boss? And he said, because I'm the boss and I told you to do it, that's why. Have you ever heard that? And what's your reaction to that? When you hear that, in other words, this communication process, see this, those words come out of somebody's mouth and you heard that content and then you assign meaning to it. So as soon as you heard that, as soon as you heard the boss say, why? Because I'm the boss and I told you to do that, that's why. Now what's your immediate, internal, mental, cognitive reaction to that statement? You don't have one?
Why?
What?
Why?
Why what?
To that statement, that's why I think it's like.
Why am I the boss? Or why am I telling you what to do? Because I'm the boss. And when I say I want this done, just do it. Don't ask me why. I've got work to do and you need to get to work on this project. I don't have time to explain it to you. Now what are you going to say? Not going to say anything? You're going to leave and go get another job so you'll find a nicer boss? Or are you going to work for me when I talk to you like that? I'm just asking. I mean, I don't know. I'm just asking. Share with me some of your thoughts.
Probably say okay.
You'd probably say, okay.
Mhm.
Wouldn't be a happy camper.
Well, it's kind of a cop-out kind of a statement.
What's that?
The Well, I'm the boss, so I said so. It's kind of a cop-out.
What do you mean by it's a cop-out?
It's just, I guess, kind of like an excuse not to explain why this thing needs to be done.
Does the boss have to explain why things have to be done?
And it's beneficial.
Why can't we just do what the boss says? Just to make the boss happy.
Sometimes it's better not to, because the boss isn't perfect.
No, he isn't, but he's the boss. So I'll just do it his way. Rather than ask him to explain himself to me. Oh, wait a minute, let me turn that around. Why do you want me to explain to you why I want you to do something?
It just makes it clearer of what you want and why we need to make this change.
So, what if I just said, hey, I want you just to learn to submit to authority and do what you're told without question. So, just practice doing what I tell you to do. And then maybe after work, when you're not being paid to work, we can sit down and talk about all the whys. Because we got work to get done here, and if I stop and explain every reason for every directive I give, it's going to waste a lot of productive work time. What kind of reaction are you having now?
Sounds fair.
What?
Sounds fair.
Okay. Do you have a reaction, Daniel?
Depends whether you follow through with it or not. Because you said maybe we could get together and
After work and talk about it?
that seems like it might happen, might not. You're just trying to get out of the situation now.
Okay, so he's not sure I'm really going to stay after work to talk about it. He thinks I'm just trying to get out and giving him a reason for doing it. Right, Daniel? Talk, what's your reaction? What did I just say? I just said, hey, when I tell you to do something here at work, we got a lot of work to do, just say, okay, I'll do it. And if you wonder why we're doing it after work when we're not on the clock, we'll sit down after work when you clock out, and I'll sit down and take time to explain to you why I give all these directives. But when I give them, just say, okay, boss, I'll do it. What's your reaction to me saying that? Is that okay with you?
Yeah, I think so.
You don't have a problem with me telling you what to do without explaining the why of it?
Yeah, if I respect the boss, I think that I'm doing that.
If you respect the boss. You know why I respect the boss? Because he's the one that signs my paycheck. And since I come here every day to get some money so I can pay the bills for stuff I want, I just say if that's the way he does things, I do it his way. And for Daniel, I better make sure after work I say, Daniel, you want to stick around a while and talk about why I wanted you to do that? And then Daniel has to make a decision, don't you, Dan? Do I want to stay here at work after I've been here for 8 hours and spend another hour drinking coffee and talking to the boss about his reasons for giving me directives? Or do I want to get in my car and go do my own thing with my paycheck in hand for the 8 hours I've been working? So I say after work, Daniel, you want to sit down and talk about the why now? What would be your reaction?
Well, I don't think it would matter as much then, because it's already done.
Ah, did you hear what Daniel just said? It doesn't matter now because it's already over. I've already done it. I didn't get a reason for it. I just did it because you said so. I didn't like it. I don't like you. No, I don't like the way you do things. But you're the boss, so no sense talking now because it's all over. When our children were younger, when they were real little, I would tell them to do something. They would say, "Why, Dad?" And I tried an experiment with them. I said, "You do what I told you to do, and then after you've done it, I will explain why." And Daniel, they said exactly what you just said to me. After the fact, they said, "It doesn't matter now, Dad. I've already done it." I'm going, but I thought you wanted to know why. And here's what my daughter said. She said, "I did before I did what you wanted. I did want to know why. But now that I've already done it, it doesn't matter." I'm going, "What do you mean it doesn't matter?" And here's okay, now, see, I try to figure out what's going on in people's heads. I study psychology. Tell me what you think about this conclusion. Here was my conclusion. If I tell my child the reason for every directive I give them, then they're doing what I directed them to do because it makes sense to them. You follow me? If I just tell them to do something and they don't know why and they do it, that's pure, unadulterated obedience. Now, when they understood why, they went ahead and obeyed me. You follow me? They did what I told them to do. So they were obedient, but they were obedient because it made sense. Are there times when we need to learn? Think about your relationship to God, big picture stuff. Are there times when we need to be obedient even if we don't understand why? So, do I need to teach my children that when they're younger? That there's occasions to be obedient without asking why? Even if it grates on me a little bit, because why does it grate on me to have someone tell me what to do? I have a little voice inside that says, because I don't like being told what to do. So, everyone who likes being told what to do, raise their hand. There's no hands up, Logan. No hands up. I wonder if, Logan, is your hand up? If it is, send me an email and say, "Yep, I put my hand up. I love being told what to do." I just don't know anybody who's wired in such a way that they love to be told what to do. But I would like to have an explanation as to why you want me to do that. It's like, then I can decide, yeah, that makes sense. So that's more reasonable. In fact, when I was a teenager, my mom had this famous phrase she used at our house. She would tell us to do something, and then she would say, "Doesn't that make sense?" And one time, did any of you have parents who say, "Doesn't that make sense? Doesn't that make sense?" Okay, one time my mom told me to do something, and she said, "Doesn't that make sense?" And it didn't make sense, so I said, "No, Mom, that doesn't make sense." And I still have a vivid memory of a stinging sensation on the side of my face. Anyone know what that is? Have you ever had a stinging sensation on the side of your face? Am I the only one that ever got that in life? Did any of you ever have a stinging sensation on any part of your body from one of your parents? Yes? 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 What was that stinging sensation supposed to, what message was that stinging sensation supposed to send?
What you did was bad.
Whatever I did was bad and inappropriate. And what did I do that was bad and inappropriate? Telling my mother that what she said didn't make sense. So in order to avoid the stinging sensation on the side of my face, when she said, "Doesn't that make sense?" I said, "Sure, Mom," whether it did or not. Which means sometimes, what was I doing?
Lying.
I was lying to my mother to avoid getting smacked on the side of the face. You say, "You should have turned her into social services. She was being abusive." Well, there was no social services where you could turn your mother in. If I would have told, today, if a child told a teacher the mother did that, they would call social services. There'd be a social worker out the house talking to the parent. When I was a kid, if I would have told the teacher my mother did that, the teacher would have said, "Well, you probably had it coming." I'm going, "Why would you say that?" And the teacher would say, "Because you're a smart mouth at school, so you're probably a smart mouth at home too." What a painful thing for a smart mouth kid to hear. They just told me the truth about who I was and what I was doing and how it was inappropriate. And it's just like, hey, that's life. That's part of it. And when this guy says, "This is what you should do," I'm saying, so my first question is, are you telling me what I should do or asking me what I should do? Or suggesting something? And he says, "No, I'm telling you, do this." And if he says do that, then I'm going to say, okay. And you guys are going to say, why? And if he says, "Because I told you to do it and I'm the boss," then you'll do it. You just won't respect him as much as if he gave you reasons, right? Have you ever worked in a fast food restaurant? Did the boss give you reasons for what he told you to do?
Probably not, but also I was a manager, so
Did you have people asking you why?
not generally, no.
How come?
Because generally they had worked there long enough to know why.
Oh, they had figured out why you're supposed to do it. Or they were probably afraid, Daniel, that if they said, "Why do I have to do that?" you just might fire them if you were the manager. Or you might write them up for not getting their work done and spending too much time asking questions. So somewhere we need to learn that principle of, I'm just going to obey, even if I don't like being told what to do, because it's just part of that. It's all wrapped up in an umbrella, submitting to authority, as opposed to saying, everything I do makes sense to me. Some things I do because I'm going to be obedient, whether it makes sense or not. Okay, look at this chart here. So this is what we should do about whatever. And the guy has a response. And I still don't know why the guy who wrote the book said, "I don't know why you would say that." I don't understand what he means by that. Do you understand what the guy means by that? I don't know why you would say that. This is what we should do tomorrow at the end of the week with all the snacks. The people who brought snacks should take the snacks they brought home. I don't know why you would say that. Oh, well, let's just, does someone want to be the guy who says, "I don't know why you would say that"? Tomorrow, after class, here's what we should do. Everyone who brought snacks should take home the snacks they brought, if there's any left over. Does anybody want to say to me, "I don't know why you would say that"?
I don't know why you would say that.
Thank you, Esther. Well, it just seems to me that the people who brought them, if they're left over, ought to take them home. Were you thinking we ought to do something else?
Yes.
What
Yes,
do you
I
think
was.
we should do, Esther?
I'm thinking we should pick one person to take them all home.
Should we vote? You mean we should vote as to which one person gets to take them all home?
Yeah.
What do the rest of you think about Esther's idea?
Oh.
Todd says, I don't like that idea. Daniel? What? You don't have an opinion?
No.
Or you don't want to express your opinion?
Don't have an opinion.
You don't have one? So he doesn't care. So would you vote for her motion if she made a motion?
I don't know.
Well, Esther, make a motion for what we do with the snacks on Friday.
I make a motion that we vote one person to take them home.
Is there a second to that motion? Guess what, Esther? You know what parliamentary procedure says? Your motion died for lack of a second. A motion can't be discussed or voted on unless someone seconds it. So if nobody seconds her motion, the motion just died. What do you think, Esther, about parliamentary procedure?
That's fine.
Hey, if that's the way it is, that's the way it is. If that's the rules of how you do things in an orderly fashion, then so be it. So her motion just died. Anybody else have another motion about what we should do with the snacks on Friday? Yes.
Make a motion that we eat it all before Friday.
We have a motion on the floor that we eat all the snacks before we leave here on Friday. Is there a second to that motion? Daniel seconds that motion. Any discussion? I'm thinking somebody's going to get sick. What do you think, Todd?
I don't think we can do that. It's a lot.
I think there's more food than we can eat.
Sounds like a challenge.
You think you would like to try that, Daniel?
It can be done.
Good.
That's a lot of stuff. So, all in favor of her motion, say aye. All opposed, nay. All right. All in favor of her motion, raise your right hand. All opposed to her motion, raise your right hand. Now, what happens when there's one vote for the motion and one vote against the motion and one person who doesn't vote?
You can vote, I didn't.
What?
You can vote, I
Well,
didn't.
see, according to parliamentary procedure, I'm not supposed to vote unless there's a tie.
There is a tie.
Yes. So Daniel does not want to vote. So he's forced the issue for me to resolve the situation that's a tie. Now, see, I'm not going to vote one way or the other on this thing. I'm going to suggest that we amend the motion. And here's my amendment to your motion, Esther. We can try to eat everything before we leave on Friday. And if we don't eat it all, then the people who brought it take it home. Would you accept that amendment? So she's accepted, because see, when you amend the motion, the person who made the motion has to accept the amendment. So she accepts the amendment. So now we have an amended motion. We try to eat it all before we leave here on Friday, and if we don't, the people who brought the food will take it home. Is there a second to that motion? Talk, you second that motion? Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Did you say aye? A. All opposed nay? I don't have to, because there's 3 people voted and they all voted yes. So we now have a unanimous decision. Here we are, back to that marvelous thing that I love in an organization where we all are on the same page, we all agree. I love to reach that thing called unanimity in an organization. And sometimes the only way to reach it is by taking an amendment or taking a motion that everyone's not in favor of and amending it or changing it a little bit to make it more favorable to everybody in the room. And we did it. And that was a fun little exercise. Okay, let's get back to this communication thing. These 2 pictures of these 2 guys. The first guy says something. The second guy, now see the picture here? He heard what was said. That's over on the right-hand side. He heard what was said. Let's see. Then what happens after he hears what was said? Before I came to class today, I got something out of the trunk. Did you hear what I said? Before I came to class today, I got something out of the trunk. Now, you heard what I said? Okay. Attach meaning to what I said. Do you have a picture in your mind of what I did before I came to class today? What did I do?
Like with the elephant.
What?
Like with the elephant and stuff.
What did I say I did? I got something out of the trunk. I have a pet elephant at home, and I took a dirt clod that was stuck in his trunk.
Good.
Now, Daniel has a vivid imagination, doesn't he? Did anyone else have a different picture in your head?
Well, you could have gotten it out of like, the chest kind of trunks.
I could have gotten something out of a trunk, a chest kind of trunk at home before I walked out the door. Is that what you were thinking, Todd? What? What were you thinking?
Maybe like chairs or table.
When I said I got it out of the trunk,
Could be the trunk of the car.
could have been the trunk of my car. There's a whole bunch of different meanings that you can attach to those words. And you understand, when you're trying to communicate, you're saying, how would I rephrase that to make it clear? Oh, before I came to class today, I got some extra snacks out of the trunk of my car. You follow me? Did you see those extra snacks I got back there?
The M&Ms.
What?
The M&Ms.
M&Ms? Are there M&Ms over there? What were they doing in the trunk of my car? Yeah, do you understand? So that it's like, now what did I do the second time that enhances the ability to communicate? I mean, what did I do to make my communication clearer the second time than the first time? Saying, I got something out of the trunk. I said, I got something out of the trunk of my car. Knowing that there could be 3 different pictures in people's heads when they hear the word trunk. And that's part of where miscommunication comes in, is that we only say part of what we're thinking, and people take that part and come to a different conclusion. They assign meaning, and then it's like Daniel, since he was thinking of an elephant, would say, what, you have a pet elephant home and he had something stuck in his trunk? He was sucking up water and he picked up some rocks or something? And I'm going, what are you talking about, Daniel? And he goes, well, you said that you took something out of the trunk, and I just thought it might be the trunk of your pet elephant. Now watch what happens in the communication process. I'm talking about the trunk of my car. Daniel is asking questions about the trunk of a pet elephant that I don't even have. Now, do you understand what I'm about to say to Daniel? Am I getting ready to say something unpleasant to Daniel? Now watch this. Have you ever given a bizarre response to something a teacher said in class, and the teacher said, where did that come from? and Daniel would say, from my vivid imagination. That's where it came from. And I think, Daniel, if you said that in grade school, you would have gotten in trouble. Oh, you were homeschooled, weren't you? So he didn't have to have a teacher out there. Would you have gotten in trouble if you'd have said that to your mom? If she said, go get something out of the trunk for me? And you would say, do we have an elephant on the property, Mom, that I'm supposed to pull something out of his trunk? I'm thinking your mother would have said, Daniel, I'm going to pull something out of your trunk if you don't get up right now and do what I told you to do. I don't know if she would have said that. But you understand that when we're, watch this, when we're trying to communicate and the person who we're trying to communicate with misunderstands us, and they come back with some bizarre statement, we don't generally assume that, oh, they misunderstood, I better say it again in a different way so they'll understand. We get offended by what they said and think they're not paying attention. It's that human nature thing that starts to kick in again, and I'm saying that what we need to do is to say, no matter what a person says in response to a question or a comment we make, we need to understand that, I mean, there's been times when, even in class, I've asked a question and someone's given an answer, and I've said in my heart, when I'm trying to assign meaning to it, when I'm doing all this internal thinking, I'm going, I don't know where that came from or what they're thinking about, but apparently the words I used made that connection in their mind. I'll just keep going rather than say something that would embarrass them or make them feel bad. Because in a classroom setting, it's easy for the teacher to do things to make people feel like they don't want to share anymore. Have I made you not want to share in this room, or have I made the environment such that it's easy to share what you're thinking? Or are you a little uncomfortable sharing your innermost thoughts about what's going on in here? You don't want to tell me.
Isn't that answer enough?
What?
Isn't that answer enough?
I don't know, is it? I mean, see, does no answer mean that you're not comfortable sharing? Or does no answer mean you're not sure what I will say about your answer? Or you're not sure how you feel about it? So, no answer doesn't tell me very much. Oh, Esther, but watch. Now see, if Esther was asking that question, no answer would tell you a great deal, wouldn't it? But here's the question, Esther. Would the conclusion that you drew, would the meaning you assigned to no answer be an accurate meaning of what's going on in everybody's head?
Possibly.
Maybe. Maybe. What's the other side? Maybe not. I would like to think that most people in the world think kind of like I do. So if they're not answering, they would probably be thinking the same thing I'm thinking if I'm not answering. But my experience has demonstrated that 3 people who didn't answer a question probably have 3 completely different thoughts about the question I asked. That's how much variety there is in the human race. So that's why I sometimes keep pushing for an answer, because I'm trying to get inside your heads to find out, what are you thinking about the things I'm saying? Okay, so we come around here and the guy who heard what we said says some words back to us. Now we're on the receiving end. We heard what he said. We assign meaning to it. We think about it. We assign meaning to it. We form a message and we say, where did that come from? I mean, the comment about, are you talking about an elephant? And I go, where did that come from? And Daniel, what would you say if you said, were you talking about an elephant? And I wasn't, because I was talking about snacks in the trunk of the car. So I said, an elephant, where did that come from? What's your response to me? Now see, we're trying to keep this thing going around in the circle. So where did that come from, Daniel? This elephant thing.
My brain.
You said trunk, and when I said trunk, the first thought that came to your mind was elephant? Yeah, is that right?
One of the first ones.
Oh, it was
Just
one of the
seemed
first
best one.
It was the one you wanted to express. Even if you thought of the others, that was the one you chose to blurt out, right?
Yeah.
Why did you blurt out that one instead of one of the others? Instead of a car or a chest at home? I just did. I just thought it'd be fun to say trunk of an elephant. Oh, okay. So, but you see what happens? The communication process just keeps going around. And just keeps going around. I said, did you think of a car or a chest? Yeah, but I also thought of an elephant, so I thought I would say elephant. Oh, okay. So now we've clarified the communication process. And other people in the room, okay, when I said I took something out of the trunk and he said elephant, did anybody think, did you have a thought about when he said elephant, did you think about that? Said, where did that come from? Or why do you think elephant? Or you go, no. Hey, elephants have a trunk, cars have a trunk, houses have a trunk.
I just thought it was clever.
Oh, I thought that was clever. Okay, maybe Daniel was just being clever. Are there any other trunks besides elephants, cars, and a chest at home to store things in? You can't think of any? Oh man, you people must not love trees very much.
What? The bag?
A trunk of a tree? What's the trunk of a tree? You've never heard of the trunk of a tree? Have you heard of the trunk of a tree?
Yeah.
Is that right? Is there such a thing as the trunk of a tree?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Talk's never heard about that. What's the trunk of a tree? Someone explain to Talk. A little communication here. One of you explain to Talk what the trunk of a tree is.
It's the middle part of it, and like the bottom. Like the main, not the branches.
Oh.
So there's a tree outside. So, do you have a picture in your mind now, Talk, of what the trunk is?
Yeah, I think so.
the branches are sticking out up here, and the roots are down below the ground, and the big round thing that connects to the ground and holds up the branches is called
Trunk of a tree.
the trunk of a tree. Now, what do you think about that, Todd? I mean, what do you think about that part of a tree being called the trunk of a tree? Is that okay? You say, hey, see, now Todd's being nice. Because he's saying, hey, if that's what they do in America with English, if they want to use English like that, if they want to say something dumb and call part of a tree a trunk along with a car and other things, it's like, hey, what can I say? I'm just here learning English, picking up on this culture. But it could be that when he talks to his friends back in Japan, he goes, people in America are really stupid. They use the same word, T-R-U-N-K, for the nose of an elephant, for a chest at home to store blankets in, for the part of their car where they keep a spare tire, and for the part of a tree that holds up branches. That's just dumb. Well, the English have helped to solve that problem. If you go to England and say, I got some treats out of the trunk of my car, they would say, what? Anyone know what they'd say in England? Oh, you don't know what word they use in England to talk about the trunk of the car. What?
I said I did know once. It's something funny.
It is. Do any of you have any? Do you know what cowboy boots are?
Cowboy boots.
What are cowboy boots? Do you know what cowboy boots are? What are they, Todd?
Like longer boots?
What's a cowboy boot look like? What is a cowboy boot?
Like long boots.
A boot.
They're brown normally.
What? Isn't a cowboy boot a kind of a shoe? Okay, maybe we shouldn't call it a shoe. A cowboy boot is a form of footwear. Okay? See, we're doing this communication stuff. A cowboy boot is a kind of footwear. And it's footwear that's especially designed for what kind of person? A cowboy? It's not.
Texans that want to assert their dominance.
What?
Generally Texans that want to assert their dominance.
Oh. Texans who want to assert their dominance wear cowboy boots. Because cowboys, when they put those boots on, they get on their horse, they're out there riding herd over all them little pokies. Those little cows out there, they take their horses and run them around and take their ropes and tie them up. They're cowboy boots. So, do any of you know anything about, now, and see, cowboy boots, is this okay to say this? Are cowboy boots a fashion statement? Because some people have never ridden a horse, never roped a calf, never been out on a ranch, but they wear cowboy boots because they just think they're kind of cool. So, do you know about any other kind of boots besides cowboy boots? What kind of boots are you familiar with?
Just normal work boots.
Work boots. What do work boots look like?
Kind of ugly.
And that's the criteria. If it's going to be a work boot, it has to look ugly. If it doesn't look ugly, I mean, does anyone wear a work boot to make a fashion statement?
Guess somebody could.
No.
Somebody could. A few years ago, there were a group of people that were wearing work boots to make fashion statements. It was girls, Esther. they would take men's work boots and wear them to make a fashion statement, along with wearing overalls. That they just wanted to make a statement about, hey, I can wear overalls and work boots if I want to. Do you know of any other kind of boots besides cowboy boots and work boots?
Snow boots?
Children's boots?
Snow.
Snow boots. Snow boots. Do any of you have any snow boots? You ever wear them to school? Why not?
There's no snow around here.
But wouldn't they keep your feet warm when it's cold? Say, yes, they would. But wearing snow boots when there's no snow would not be a fashion statement. Would that be a fashion faux pas of some kind? Snow boots? Oh, cowboy boots are made for cowboys herding cattle. Snow boots are made for walking in the snow. Any other kind of boots you're familiar with?
Like the fluffy ones.
The fluffy boots.
The fluffy soft ones that girls wear, that guys for some reason can't wear.
What are those called?
It's mud that does it.
What?
Mud or Ugg boots. Or something.
I know what you're talking about, Daniel. And now see, this is interesting. We give names to the other boots, and then we start talking about those little fluffy boots that girls wear. And I know I think I have the exact picture in my head that you have in yours, but we don't have a name for it, do we? We just fluffy boots that girls wear. Do you have a name for it, Esther?
It depends on the brand. You just go by the
Oh,
brand,
so
I
now
think.
the fluffy boots that girls wear have name brands to them. Any other kind of boots you're familiar with?
Mountain boots.
What?
Mountain boots.
Mountain boots? Mountain boots and hiking boots and mountain climbing boots? Do you have some of those? You have some mountain climbing boots? Do you climb mountains?
Yeah.
Wow. You walk up there where the air is so thin you can hardly catch your breath?
Yes, sometimes, but I don't climb such a high mountain, so.
You stay down here where you can breathe a little bit.
Mhm.
Do your mountain boots have those little things you put on the bottom of them to walk on ice?
No.
What are those things you put on the bottom of mountain boots? What?
Spikes?
Spikes? Are they called spikes?
I think so.
I thought they were called crampons. You guys don't know. They don't do. He's from Texas. They don't have any mountains in Texas. Where are you from, Esther?
Illinois.
She's from Illinois. They don't have any mountains in Illinois either. Let's go. Esther says, let's go climb a mountain. Talk goes to Illinois. Esther says, we got mountains. I'll show it to you. You go to Texas, we'll show you our mountains. In Oklahoma, they say they have mountains in Oklahoma. There are no mountains in Oklahoma. You want to see a mountain? You go to Colorado, people. That's where you see a mountain. And it is fun to climb those mountains with mountain climbing boots. Or if you don't want to climb mountains, you just want to walk through Illinois or walk through Texas, what kind of boots would you buy instead of mountain climbing boots? What?
Hiking boots?
Hiking boots. Hiking. Hiking? That sounds like a good Japanese word, doesn't it? Hiking? What is hiking? Hiking. What does it sound like in Japan? What word in Japan sounds like hiking? If I was in Japan and I said hiking, what would people be picturing in their head?
Hiking.
Would they picture going on a walk through the woods?
Yeah, I think so.
They would? So maybe that's where it comes from. Maybe it's a Japanese word that we brought to America. Hey, who knows? I've just often wondered where some of these words come from. Hiking boots? Hiking? No, we're not going hiking, we're going walking. Well, walking, hiking, it's the same thing. You know, it's just like, so what other kind of boots? Any other kind of boots besides the ones we mentioned?
Rain boots?
What?
Rain boots?
I didn't hear you.
Rain boots?
Rain boots. Those are boots for walking in the rain.
In mud.
See, my mother called those galoshes.
Go around outside your shoes, so.
What?
Galoshes go on around outside your shoes.
Oh, and so you put galoshes on over your shoes, where rain boots, you put them right on your foot.
Yeah.
Well, live and learn. But sure enough, the galoshes that my mother gave me, you put them over your shoes and it had little buckles, you snapped up on them, and you'd wear them so you wouldn't get your shoes wet going to school, and when you got to school, you'd undo the buckles and take them off. I never thought of that. Thank you, Daniel, for helping me clarify that. Because I have some boots at home that I put on that come about up to here, rubber boots that I wear when I'm going to go outside when it's muddy and do work so I won't get my shoes muddy. And then I just take them off and wash them and clean them. Can you think of any other kinds of boots? Say, no, that's it. What about engineer boots? What?
Like booties, like the babies wear.
Oh, booties, like babies wear, little booties. Are you familiar with engineer boots? None of you know what engineer boots are.
I think I have it.
Have you?
Yeah.
Who wears engineer boots?
I don't know. Now it's like one of the fashion style in Japan.
Oh,
So
it's a fashion style in Japan.
Yeah. Now it's popular.
Okay. And guess where engineer boots started? Cowboy boots started on the ranch with cowboys. Any idea where engineer boots started?
Engineers?
What?
Engineers?
Now, when you say engineer, see, Esther, when you say engineer, okay, that's good enough right there. Let's do this communication thing. Engineer. She said engineers were the ones who wore them, and she's right. Now, what picture comes to your mind when you think of an engineer?
There's like 50 different types of engineers, so.
Oh, there's 50 different types of engineers, so which kind is it?
Is it the train engineer?
That's exactly right, Esther. Good for you. It was the engineer who ran a train that wore those heavy black, thick-soled boots, and so they're called engineer boots because they started out with them, and then they became popular as a fashion statement. In Japan, a number of years ago, they were a fashion statement popular here in the United States. You understand this process going around? When you're trying to carry on a conversation and communicate, you have to get this feedback. You have to go back and forth and talk it through to clarify things in your mind. And you have to get people to be willing to tell you what's going on in their heads. See, when you said engineers, I said, what kind of engineers? And Daniel just blurted out, there must be 50 kinds of engineers. And Talk jumped in and said, engineer boots are a fashion statement in Japan. See, now all of a sudden, you guys are opening up and just quickly responding verbally to the comments that are being made, and we're carrying on, what's it called? Conversation or communicating. We're communicating with each other. But you see how if everybody doesn't open up and share, there's not going to be good communication. And somehow you have to get people to do that when you're trying to make this communication process happen. So what does this page 113 say to do? Once we understand the process and how it works, it says we need to establish regular channels for communication. No, that's not what it says. What does it say? Establish regular channels for... Are you looking at the paper there? What's it say?
How goes it?
How goes it? What does that mean? Have you ever had anybody walk up to you and say, how goes it? Have you ever had anybody, you've had someone say that, Esther?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Esther's had, okay, so I'm gonna say, how goes it, Esther?
It's going good.
So, what am I saying to her? I said, how goes it? And she said, it's going good. So, now that you've heard the response, what does how goes it mean, Daniel?
Like, how is it going?
Ah, how's it going, Esther? It's going good. So, take your pen, Daniel, and do just what I have in mind. I put down here, how goes it? I have a question mark by it. And what did I write up above it? What did you just say?
How's it going?
How's it going? How's it going? That's what we're asking. How's it going? Because that's the phrase we use today, isn't it? Well, this book was written a long time ago, so phrases change. Do any of you have some old relatives that you talk to and they start telling stories and they talk about, and he commenced to doing this and he commenced to doing that? Oh, I love talking to old people just because they, you know what I'm talking about? They have a whole different vocabulary for describing things. I was out working in the field and I just got to feeling uneasy. And I'm going, what? He said, you know, I was just uneasy out there. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, he said, my stomach was just feeling funny. I said, oh, you mean you had a stomach ache? Yeah, he said, that's what it was. I just wasn't easy. And I thought, how funny, the way they used to talk about stuff. And so you say, okay, so we changed that one. So you have a regular channel of asking people, how's it going? How's it going? Why would you ask people, how's it going? When you come into class in the morning, do I ask you, how's it going? Do I ask you anything? Why do I ask that? Yeah, I don't know, you're just nosy. You just want to know about our business, and you just keep prying into our lives and asking questions. Any idea why I'm doing that? We're an organization, aren't we? I mean, it's a pretend organization, but aren't we an organization? And what's a good thing to do every morning when you come to work and you're talking to the people that you are supervising? What do you think is a healthy thing to do to promote communication? When you were a manager at McDonald's, did you ever say to people when they came into work, how's it going?
Yep.
Why?
Just open up like a communication channel.
Thank
That's
you,
what-
Daniel. Thank you. That's why this book is saying, ask people, open up, establish communication channels, channels of communication. Ask, how's it going? Now, what would you say in Japan, Tak, if you were talking to somebody in Japan and you wanted to do this same thing to open up channels of communication? Would you say, how's it going? Or would you say something else?
Yeah, we say, how's it going in Japanese?
Okay, you'd say, how's it going in Japanese? You have a Japanese phrase for saying, how's it going?
Mhm.
And what do people say?
They say, yeah.
They say, yeah, it's going great. You know, I said, it's going fine. Going fine. You know what another thing I would do, because of servant leadership, when I would walk around and talk to the people who I was supervising, I would say, how's it going? And then they'd tell me, it's going fine. I said, anything I can do to help, anything you need me to do for you, to make your life easier or to make your life more successful or to help you accomplish your job. You see, because I want to be available to provide the resources and the support and whatever they need to get their job done. What's the second thing that says on page 113?
Recognize different levels of communication.
Okay, when you walk into class and the class hasn't started yet, and Daniel gets here early every day, and I say, so Daniel, how's it going? And he looks at me and answers the question. Then I go turn on the computer, I go turn on the videotape and start taping. We pray and start class, and I turn on the videotape, and now I come back and I sit down here, and so I say, so, how are we doing on these assignments? How's it going? Have you made any comments about choosing a name for our organization? There's about 9 names suggested. Have you all looked at those 9 names on that discussion page? You haven't, Esther? Have you, Daniel? Have you, Todd? Well, you need to go look at that name discussion page and look at those 9 suggestions and write out some of your comments about which ones you like best. Now, is there a different level of communication when I'm talking to you now about doing this assignment than there was when before class started you walked in and I said, so how's it going? Is there a different level of communication? Before, I was just interested in opening up a channel of communication with another person. Now, I'm the guy who's going to give a grade at the end of the course. And so, all of you, all of a sudden, kind of got a serious look on your face and thought, I better get over there to the name discussion page and write some comments. Because at the end of the course, he's going to give me a grade on participation. And that participation grade is going to be determined by not only your participation in class, but also your participation in the discussion groups on Canvas. So, pick some of those names that you like and write out why you like them so other people can look at your comments, because tomorrow's Friday. We don't have any more time left. We're going to have to vote on a name by Friday. And I guess what I'd have to say is, Logan, since this is the last video, everybody else, since this is the last video you'll watch before the class ends, you need to look the names over and write your comments on there, but then you need to send me an email telling me which name you think we ought to have. And if you think any 1 or 2 of them are acceptable, you send me an email and tell me which name you're voting for. Okay? So everybody got that down? And there's another discussion page called purpose statement, where all of you have listed a purpose statement for different organizations. Well, guess what I want each of you to do on the purpose statement page? I want you to craft a purpose statement for our organization. Each of you craft a purpose statement for our organization. Okay. Well, that's enough of that. Plan your communication on page 113, this handout. Oh, maybe I should talk about different levels of communication. What if I was standing up here behind this little podium while I was saying this stuff to you, as opposed to sitting down there at the table? Does that change the dynamic of the communication process? How does it change it?
It feels much more lecturing,
Like I'm standing here
telling us a bunch of information.
telling you stuff you have to do, and when I'm sitting down over here, it's more like we're having a conversation. Isn't that funny? Watch this. So what if I just pull this thing out and sit right here and talk about it like this?
It's like you're directing the conversation.
Does that change the dynamic again? That I'm sitting on this stool? And when I'm helping someone with math, if Esther was taking my math class and she had a question, and I'd say, "What's your question, Esther?" I'd get down here on my knee and I'd say, "What is this you're having trouble with?" And I'd look at it with her and I'd sit here and fiddle with it and show her how to do it. Why would an old guy get down on one knee like this to help people understand mathematics?
Because you are welcoming and caring.
Have any of you studied math? Do you like math? Daniel likes it. Do you like math, Todd?
Always like.
Do you like math?
Oh.
Okay, so for those of you who kind of like math, Esther needs me getting right down here, being friendly about it, because math stresses her out, right? And I'm here to alleviate the stress by getting right down here on her level, helping her figure out how to do it. And that's all, and that all has to do with this levels of communication. Okay, let's turn the page over. What's the next thing it says on the back on page 114? This is from that book, The Art of Management for Christian Leaders. It says, be as redundant as possible. What does it mean to be redundant?
Just repeat what you're saying.
Repeat it again and again and again and again. Probably don't just say the same thing over and over and over, but repeat it and say it in different ways. Like, for example, when it said, recognize different levels of communication, I demonstrated 1, 2, 3, 4 different levels of communication, trying to help you grasp the concept. So it's just like you repeat it again and again. How do you spend money on communication? What kind of money would we spend on communication in our organization?
There's lots of different ways.
What?
There's lots of different ways.
Let's see, these handouts I'm giving you, I have to spend money to have a copy machine to make copies to give them to you. If we had a real organization where all of us would have to spend some money to buy a laptop or a computer or a tablet so we could communicate with each other. So we have access to email. Educate people to communicate better. What does it mean to educate people? And here's what it says on page 114. Some of us just need to learn how to be a better listener. One of the best things you can do to educate people in the communication process is teach them to be better listeners. I did an experiment one time just to see how this would work. I'm not much for going to social events, but I went to a Sunday school class party and concluded that I wasn't going to tell anybody anything. I mean, because I'm a college professor, lots of people in my Sunday school class like to ask me questions. And I thought, I'm not going to answer any questions or tell anybody anything. I'm just going to go around asking questions and listening to what people have to say about things. And say, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And if someone comes up and asks me a question, they say, hey, Dr. Bonine, what do you think about thus and so? I'm going to say, well, what do you think about it? I'm just going to turn it around. Because it's just a social setting. So I just want to see what happens when all I do is ask questions and listen to people. And at the end of this little party we had, my wife said, Tom, you know how many people have come up to me and said, your husband is just the neatest guy to talk to. Why would people think it was fun to talk to me? What would be fun about talking to someone who just asks questions and listens to what you have to say?
People like talking about themselves.
People like to share their thoughts. They like to tell somebody else what they're thinking. And you can help people become effective communicators by just teaching them to learn to be listening. Math helps. Okay, you have one mouth, right? And two ears. What does that tell you mathematically? I should listen twice as much as I talk. That's just my math coming out. Oh, and on page 115, it says give it time. Give it time. I mean, this communication process, okay, in our organization, Esther, communication is going to happen right away. I ask a question, she just speaks right up and answers. Daniel, going to take more time. He keeps it to himself. He plays it close to the chest. Talk, he just doesn't, what? He's got a lot that he could say, he just doesn't feel like saying it. So it's going to take more time with these two guys in our organization to facilitate communication than it is with Esther. What?
They're just slow folks.
They're just slow pokes. They just don't get it, do they, Esther? They just don't get it. Okay. What's the next one I have here? The communication process. This is from Rush's book. Have you figured out already? I don't want to just give you one point of view on this information. I want you to look at it from several people's points of view. So what do we have here? We have what Rush says about successful communication. And what's the first step? Rush likes steps 1, 2, 3, and 4. What's his first step?
Develop a clear concept of an idea or feeling to be communicated.
Do I clearly understand the thought or the feeling that I'm wanting to communicate? Now, watch this. Sometimes you can say to a person, so tell me how you feel about this. And they will say, I'm not sure how I feel about it. I don't know for sure. I'm having trouble putting in words my thoughts and my feelings. So, understand, you need to help people learn to develop clear concepts. And by the way, if it's not clear in my mind, if the thought isn't clear in my mind, when I pick some words to express the thought, you see how it's already going to be a little fuzzy? When people are trying to understand my thought, if it's not clear to me, it probably isn't going to be clear to them. What's step 2?
Choose the right words and actions to convey the idea in your feeling.
I come home after school today, and I walk in the house, and my wife, last week, before we had company coming, I come home, and Nina says, Tom, we have company coming. I said, I know. She said, your office is a mess. Choose the right words. Now, what does my wife mean when she says my office is a mess? Can you picture what my office looks like? Could you draw a picture of my messy office? What does she mean it's a mess? See, I'm not sure I know. Obviously, it's not very organized, but I don't need an organized office. I know where stuff is. You know what I mean? I know the place where things are, and I know how to go in there and find stuff. But it does look kind of messy. So what I've learned to say is, what is it that needs to be straightened up? Or what is it that needs to be fixed? And then she'll say, well, all that stuff strung all over the bed. Because in my office is a spare bedroom. So there's a bed that people can sleep on if I didn't have stuff strung all over it. I'm going, oh. So when she says my office is a mess, what she really means is, if you can clear the bed off where somebody could use it if they need to, you follow me? Well, why didn't she say all of that? Well, because that's the way she communicates. And since I've lived with her all these years, I just understand it. But see, what I do is I go ask a question for clarification, and she tells me it's the stuff on the bed. So the stuff on my desk, and the stuff next to my computer, and the stuff over on the stand, the nightstand next to the bed, none of that stuff matters. So I don't have to clean up that mess. It's just the mess on the bed I need to take care of. I can take care of that. So you follow what happens? Probably the best thing to do is when you're talking to somebody and they choose a word. See, I'm trying to choose the right words. So the right words for me to choose is, what mess is it that needs to be fixed first? And then when she tells me, well, it's the mess on the bed, then when I get that mess cleaned up, then, see, I was thinking, she said, the whole room's a big mess. And it's just like, so I get that mess cleaned up, and I said, so is that good enough? She said, yeah, that looks nice. And then she said, so I said, so what's the office look like now? She said, it looks nice. Now, the office went from being a mess to looking nice, all by me cleaning the stuff off the bed. And you understand, that's where, and don't put the onus on everybody else to communicate clearly to you. You're the one, now that you've taken this class and you've got these handouts, it becomes, to whom much is given, much is required. So now you have this information, it becomes your responsibility to facilitate communication with other people. In your own family, in your dorm room, in classrooms, you do what you can with your friends to facilitate communication. What's the third step?
Become aware of the surrounding communication barriers and work minimizing.
Are you aware of any communication barriers that exist in our little pretend organization? What are some barriers to good communication? My wife says, Esther, that I can be a little chauvinistic. You know what that means? It means I can be a little demeaning of women. Have you noticed any of that in this class? Oh, thank you. I can't wait to get home and tell my wife. Esther doesn't think I'm chauvinistic.
No. Don't use me to start some conflicts.
No, I'll just let her know that. And then here's what she'll say. She'll say, well, good for you, Tom. You've been on your best behavior at school, haven't you? And see, now she won't say chauvinistic, but that's what she's talking about. See, that's the word I use to describe it. But what she says is that your Oklahomanese is oozing out. See, I grew up in Oklahoma in a family context where guys make jokes about girls all the time and ridicule them and make fun of them. And because I lived with that for 18 years, I will probably pack that stuff down around, with me the rest of my life. And my wife has had occasion to see it come oozing out of me. That's what she calls it. Your ugliness comes oozing out, Tom. And it's such a beautiful picture of, it's like, you're right, I got it. And she says, when we go to Oklahoma to visit relatives, she goes, if we're down there 3 or 4 days, it's amazing how it starts oozing out again when you get back in that context. It's just a crazy thing. So it's just like, okay, so one of the barriers would be that my chauvinism could cause a barrier here. Are there any potentials for barriers between Daniel and Esther communicating? You don't know, Daniel?
Her previous conflict.
It doesn't have to be, does it? But it's always a potential for being a conflict. Wait a minute. Are there any other potential barriers? Be aware of barriers that can minimize communication. Talk's from Japan. We all know that, right? Have I made mention of Japan a few times in this class? Now, have I said anything that could create a barrier between talk and me in terms of communication by some of the things I've said about Japan? Have I said anything that could create a barrier for us communicating?
I don't think so.
Do you think I have, Daniel? Esther? Say, I don't know. So see, that's why I say I don't think I have, but what's the only way to find out is to ask and see. You mean to say there's 4 of us in this room, and just with such a small group, there's the potential for barriers in communication? I mean, right away, when Daniel finds out I'm from Oklahoma, and I find out he's from Texas, what are the implications, Daniel? You don't want to say? Would you like to tell these 2 people what people in Texas say about Okies? Go ahead. You won't hurt. Go ahead, Daniel. You won't hurt my feelings. Just be honest and candid about what Okies think. What I started to say what Okies think about Texans, but I'll save that for a little later. Go ahead and tell them what Texans think about Okies.
They're special.
Well, isn't that nice?
Is there like a rivalry between you guys or something?
Kind of.
It's not a rivalry. How can you have a rivalry with people who are inferior?
Ooh. Wait, I had no idea this is a thing.
Now, now I need to ask Daniel, now that it's come out and we've put it on the table to talk about it, has that created a barrier between us? When you first heard me say something about growing up in Oklahoma, did all of a sudden you go, well, if I'd known that, I wouldn't have taken this class? Or did he say, well, I'm kind of glad I got to know him before I knew he was from Oklahoma, because he's not as dumb as the rest of those Okies I've heard about.
Wait, why is this a thing? How did this come about?
I have no idea. I think it's because Texans talk funny.
I don't think so. Or at least I don't.
He doesn't
Okay,
have...
it comes time to eat dinner at our house, and we happen to have people from Texas there. In Oklahoma. We're in Oklahoma. We're having a big family reunion. So somehow we've got extended family that moved to Texas. Why, I have no idea. But they come back to the family reunion. And so here's a guy, he looks at, I still remember this from years ago. He looks at his little boy and says, "Hey son, it's time to chow down." I go, "It's time to what? Chow down? What is that all about?" And his son comes running over and sits down at the table to eat. It's time to sit down at the table and eat. Chow down sounds like we're feeding pets or something. They talk funny, Esther.
Do Oklahoma people think the same thing about
Now,
Texas?
Daniel doesn't talk like those goofy Texans. Because do you camouflage it? Or did you just never pick it up?
I don't think I ever picked it up. Like I say howdy, but that's just, I never.
You do?
Yeah.
Like Howdy Doody show on TV?
Yeah, I can say that too.
Howdy? 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 What's
It's like,
howdy?
how do you do? That's
Okay,
what it's
see,
short
it's
for.
like, what's howdy? I mean, what's the word? Hello, hello, hello and goodbye. Okay, if you don't say hello and you say howdy, what do you say when you say goodbye? Do the Texans have a word for goodbye?
I don't think so.
Okay, now, Daniel's not a real Texan.
Nope, I'm not.
Yeah, no.
She's the counterfeit Texan.
Have you
And the
ever-
Texans wouldn't even say you're a counterfeit Texan. You're just a foreigner living in Texas. How long did you live there?
I've always lived there.
How do you
Where'd
not
your
have,
parents
like-
come from? Were they born in Texas?
My dad was born in Africa, and my mom was born in Indiana.
And guess what? You know what that makes? That makes him?
An alien.
He is not a Texan. Are you?
Well,
I mean, you're not a true blue Texan.
I don't care to be now.
See, right there, that tells you right there. That the poor guy, he's lived all of his life in Texas, and he's a foreigner living in a strange land.
Well, true. But I felt that same way about America too. So.
Okay, about America in general.
Yeah.
Have you lived overseas?
No. Well, not more than a month or something, but yeah.
But once you got overseas, you go, this is where I want to live. This is my kind of life.
At least it makes a lot more sense to me.
It makes a lot more sense in other parts of the world than it does in America.
Yeah.
And see, Texas did that to him. It's like if he'd have grown up in Illinois, Esther, he wouldn't have this attitude about America.
Sure. You might
I
have
mean,
it worse.
okay, just to show you, you drive to Texas, you turn on the radio, and here's an advertisement. The best barbecue in Texas and the rest of the world.
Well,
So look at a map of the world. Look at the globe. And you know what the globe is? The globe is Texas and the rest of the world.
generally, most Texans bond, yes.
A true blue Texan would say amen to that. So, to a Texan, Oklahoma is like Africa, India, Japan, Hawaii. It's us and the rest of the world. So, what happens if you're an Okie? Oh, Texans don't like us? Then guess what happens in Oklahoma? If someone says they don't like us, what's the automatic Okie response? Well, we'll love you anyway and win you over with love. What would an Okie say if someone from Texas says we don't like you? What would an Okie say, Esther?
I have no idea.
What would an Okie say? We don't like you either. So there, we're even.
That's hilarious. I never knew this was a thing.
It's just crazy. And see, all this kind of stuff can build barriers when it comes to communication. Okay, what do I have here on this one? Oh, common communication barriers. He's got a list of common communication barriers on the next page, page 121. Wow. Tuning people out, letting my personal emotions distort the information, a lack of trust. That's that list I gave you the other day, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Words that have several different meanings, chow down. Where does that come from? And by the way, someone from Minnesota comes to Oklahoma to visit, and they say, you have a nice house? I have a what? A nice house? It's not a house. That's like a place where mice live. It's a house. Why do people from Michigan talk so funny? And they have, oh, you have some cows in your pasture? I have cows in my pasture. What beautiful cows you have. Do you ever let them come in the house? Give me a break, people. And so somebody says, so what is it? It's a cow. How do you spell that? Cow. C-A-W. Cow. No, it's C-O-W. I don't care how you spell it. It's a cow. And it's a house. And when I get through working out in the field, I come in and wash my face before I eat, and I wash my hands and face before I eat lunch. Did you hear that R in wash? How do you spell wash? W-A-R-S-H, wash. You mean wash? Wash? Oh, you people from Michigan are wearing me out. Wash your hands and face? Okay, none of that one. See what we have to do to minimize misunderstanding? I was in Illinois helping them start a high school. I knew when I moved to Illinois, I had to fix a whole bunch of words that I learned in Oklahoma. And we got up there, and one of the ladies working in our school, one of our young teachers, she said, I'm thirsty for a can of pop. And I said, well, there's a...
You are texting.
and she was from Illinois, right? Isn't that what you call it up there?
That's fine.
Yeah, she wanted a can of pop. See how he's shaking his head? See, there's the barrier right there, Esther. He's not texting, but he's picked up on it. Those people in the South get all touchy about it. What do you call it?
Like something a normal person would call
Oh.
it.
Well, tell me what a normal person calls it.
Like soda or Coke.
Soda.
A Coke.
Soda. Coke. That's one kind of
It
pop,
is.
is Coke.
It
There's a
is
whole bunch of
specific
other
brand.
It's like
kinds.
the whole, it's the
And
whole
soda,
circle.
those people, some of the people in Illinois who came from Arkansas called it soda. And it's like, soda, or no, it said, well, it's sody. I said, that word's not even in the dictionary, people. And soda is little white powder, comes in a box that you put in the refrigerator to keep the smell out.
Huh?
Huh? Look at Esther, Daniel.
Put baking soda in the
You
fridge.
can be enlightened by all this
You
stuff.
drink pop.
So anyway, this girl says, I'm thirsty for a can of pop. And I said, well, there's a pop machine across the street at the fire station. And as soon as I said it, I thought, uh-oh, one of those words I didn't fix from Oklahoma. And she said, what did you say? And I said, there's a pop machine across the street at the fire station. She said, no, that's not what you said at first. Oh, I said, you know what I said. It was just a mistake. It was a word I hadn't fixed from Oklahoma. She goes, you said far station. I said, yes, I did. That's what it's called in Oklahoma. And she starts laughing and she goes, When I went to school in Arkansas at John Brown University, there was a kid there that called them far stations and talked like that. And I said, what was his name? And she said, Jay Messenger. I said, that's my cousin. She just about died. She said, I can't wait to get over to call my dad and tell him that my principal is Jay Messenger's cousin. Because, I mean, it's just like, and who would have thought that would have happened? I mean, they put him in, but I said, what was his name? Because I had a cousin about her age that went to John Brown. And sure enough, she said it was Jay Messenger. And next time I saw him, I told him, I said, hey, guess who works for me in Peoria? And he said, who? I said, Linda Briggemeyer. And he goes, what? I said, she's one of my teachers. I said, she's a good teacher, but it's just the idea that it's almost like jargon, if we can call it that, from geographic locations can create barriers. See, who would have thought Daniel would be bothered by you saying pop? And see, look at it, it's just, now see Esther, now see, get this. See, Talk, this is the way it works in this country. Now that we know it irritates him, we just want to say pop, 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 don't we? I mean, it's just like we just want to mess with him. It's just it's part of the American culture. And what we don't realize is that this stuff that's part of our culture creates barriers for the communication process. Okay, so what else? What can you do to minimize misunderstanding? Well, I gave it to you in a lecture the other day. I read it to you off the notes. If you didn't get it down, here it is in print. So look at those little bullets there, or those little dots, and take it to heart. Step 4, the receiver must absorb the transmitted information by listening to the words and observing the actions. Now, and I will say this for Daniel. When we're talking about pop, as much as it was grating on him, I got the impression that he was being receptive to the conversation, even if he didn't like the words being used. And isn't that something? When he expresses his own favorite words for it, Coke and soda, that's as offensive to Esther. Okay, look at her. Look at her. She's shaking her head, yes. That's as offensive to Esther as pop is to you. And see, Daniel said, it couldn't be. It couldn't be. It couldn't be.
Pop, it's like it hurts your ears. It's like.
And that's what soda does to her ears. And Coke is even worse.
Yeah, it is.
Coke
Coke
is not just hurting your ears, it's making your head ring for a week. No, I don't want a Coke. I want a Mountain Dew. Well, yeah, hey, don't get bent out of shape. It's a Coke. It's not a Coke.
No,
And you
Coke
say
is a
Mountain
specific
Dew.
brand. You can add
Coke.
like
Or you can
cherry
say you want
Coke,
a drink
Diet Coke.
and specify.
May
that
I
you
have
want
a
it.
carbonated beverage?
You could say that too.
Yeah.
It's better than that word.
What do you use pop for?
Like a tart?
A Pop Tart?
That's the only thing I could think of.
Pop and Blue.
Yeah.
Do any of you come from a culture where you call your father Pop? Okay. So what you have to watch for when you're in charge is, are people being open? Are they absorbing what other people are saying? And since I wasn't sure Daniel was absorbing what you were saying, and I saw Esther's reaction when he said Coke and soda, I thought we'll just have to massage this absorption process a little bit so we don't let this become a barrier.
So talk. Soda pop is called pop.
Step 5. Look what step 5 says. Step 5 on page 122 of Rush's book. The receiver must translate the words and actions into ideas and feelings. And that's why, Esther, we won't say POP very often. Because, yeah, watch. Because you know how touchy he can be. Oh, we're having too much fun here. This is too good. Okay. And the receiver must develop correct ideas and feelings. And if we work at it long enough,
Correct your ideas and
we
feelings.
will get him to not be offended by the word pop and maybe even say it someday.
Oh, yes.
Probably right now he's at the, this thing here just wore me out when I read this. Management Training Systems has surveyed thousands of employees in an effort to determine the cause of poor communication. The survey results indicate that poor listening causes most misunderstanding. Poor listening. Research indicates that unless people have had specific training in listening, their efficiency in listening is only about 25%. Unless people have been taught how to listen effectively, they only catch about 1/4 of what's being said. That means if you were to pick up every 4th word of my lecture and try to put it together in a coherent sentence or paragraph, that would be a disaster. But fortunately, you've been in school long enough where you've acquired some listening skills. But understand that the percentage is really high for misunderstanding. Here's another paragraph that I think is interesting. Much of the difficulty in listening is caused by the fact that the mind can listen faster than a person can talk. It's estimated that the average person can listen at a rate of 400 to 600 words a minute, while most people can only speak 200 to 300 words a minute. As a result, during a conversation, what does it say? The mind tends to occupy itself with other things half the time. See how that can be distracting?
That's why you watch videos on fellowship.
All right. Well, that's enough of that one.
It's actually better.
It's time to have a meeting. Who wants to have their meeting first?
Let's meet it.
Talk or Esther?
I'm
Okay, Esther wants to go first. So come on up here and I'll move my stuff out of the way. Or do you want that podium? Or do you want to sit on this chair? You want to sit here at the table? That'll work.
That's my
Have a seat and I'll go over here and sit down and take some notes.
Okay, welcome to this meeting. Call to order. The purpose of this meeting is to discuss our plans for our mission trip of your guys' youth groups to the orphanage in Guatemala. My idea was to have the opportunity for each of your guys' youth groups to come spend a week or two at the orphanage helping out with the kids and helping out with different service projects and community outreach projects. And the schedule of whatever can be flexible based on what you think your kids want to do, what you think you want to do, just what would be more receptive to the kids and what needs we have at the moment at the orphanage. To do that, of course, we'll have to have lots of communication between the leaders before this event takes place. But I am very open to hearing your ideas of what you guys think the kids would be impacted most, would be helpful most, would want to do, what would work, what wouldn't work. So, if you guys have ideas, now would be a great time to share them. And so I figure there'll be chances for them to do kids programs with.
Do you have any ideas on where they'll be staying?
Optimal, they'll be staying on campus with the kids. They'll
You
be
guys will have extra space there.
Sure. I honestly don't know what the facility looks like, but that is the hope, to have a house where you can fit 10, 15 people in, just for a missions trip.
So there's
organizations.
a limit on
Yes, there would be.
people.
So you could come.
Do you have certain requirements on what teens can come? And the maturity level or tests?
That would probably be up to the leader. Maybe an application process of deciding who, if your group would be mature enough to come and be able to handle, a week in a different culture. But yeah, as long as they pass your qualifications, I think we'll be okay. Probably nobody under 13. Make sure they're teenagers and have their parent permission and all that. But
Is it, where are you planning on going?
Guatemala, to the orphanage in Guatemala. Yeah. And so, we definitely work with kids, of course, at the orphanage or camp in the area. And depending on what your youth group kids need or would rather be capable of doing, we could do building projects or service projects like that, or just evangelism community, going out to the city and evangelizing that way. So it can be changed and catered to whatever you think is best.
Is there any training?
I think that training would have to get done prior to the trip. And
So will you send us requirements for the trip?
once we get planned out the schedule of what activities we could do, then yes, I feel like that is a good chance I will make note of that. Do you think training videos would be best, or just training, giving you guys supplies and knowing what to do and then having you guys communicate to the kids?
We would have to communicate, you train us and then we train them.
Okay.
I think.
Maybe a combination of videos and books and my personal testimony of the culture and stuff. Do you have any ideas of that? How could we train the kids to be prepared for this trip?
Watching the video and or sharing about the orphanage and something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Do you have any other ideas of what, any other different activities that you could suggest that we would do, or things we should avoid doing?
Painting fences.
Avoid painting fences. Is there a personal story in this?
I won't say anything.
Okay.
So how long is that mission trip?
I would ask it'd be a week minimum. I mean, it could go up longer than that if you have the finances and the ability to do that. But definitely 6-7 days minimum.
What time of year would this be at?
So I would assume it would just have to be all year round. This house would be open to different groups being, coming and visiting the kids. So it could be any year round that the house is open. So we'd have to just coordinate with schedules of whenever.
Does the weather change much?
I'm pretty sure they have a rainy season, so it might be kind of difficult if it's all muddy and rainy. But I would have to look into that more.
Paint fences in the rain.
No. Yeah, if it's raining, we'll have to change the activities, of course. But there's plenty of work to do, I'm sure, inside and outside the orphanage.
How big is the orphanage?
Currently, this orphanage is I think it has 20 kids, but it is in the process of building more buildings to grow. So, yeah, by the time you guys get here, it could be much more.
Do you have one-on-one time? Since if we have 15 teenagers and 20 kids.
One-on-one time with.
Teenagers and the kids, or not one-on-one. I don't know if they have child protection in Guatemala, but one or two, or just small groups with teens.
I think as long as it's you're not, it's not one-on-one in a closed room.
Yeah.
Way, like, I think other than that, it'd be perfectly acceptable. It's a good idea to build relationships.
Do they speak English?
There's translators, and a lot of the leaders speak both languages, English and Spanish, but most of the kids only speak Spanish. They can pick up some English words, but the primary is Spanish.
What's the closest town?
The capital city, which is about 2 or 3 hours away by car. From what I gather, it's on the edge of a poverty-stricken area. So, if that's all the suggestions you guys have for questions, I would move to ask if anybody wants to make a motion to make this missions trip a reality. Anybody want to second that motion?
I can't second.
Yeah.
Do it. I think that's a second. Okay. All in favor of starting this planning process to make an orphanage missions trip, say aye.
Yeah.
Awesome. So now that we are unanimous, we will begin this tedious planning process. Thank you for gathering here today.
All right. Thank you, Esther. So I think it's only fair that Esther gets to talk about the meeting first. So what'd you think?
The facts that I shared may or may not be true.
But you had to do something, right? You're right in the midst of a meeting. I'm trying to conduct a meeting, and I'm trying to conduct a meeting, and I'm trying to
meeting.
I'm trying to move to the place where we make a decision about something, and they're asking all of these unrelated questions. What is wrong with these people?
They were completely related.
Yeah.
What?
They were completely related.
Oh, they were related?
My answers were very educated guesses.
Now, how were all those questions related? Now, what was your agenda?
To discuss.
A plan for a trip. To make plans for a trip to the orphanage. And how were all those questions that were asked related to planning a trip to the orphanage?
I think they were all pretty well related.
Do you think they were all related?
Indirectly, yeah, maybe.
Okay, now that's a good word. Indirectly. Because watch this, watch how this communication process works. If you want me to help you plan to do something, I have a need to know some stuff that is not directly related, but indirectly related to what we're going to do. And that's why all those questions were relevant questions. And if Esther would have said, your questions have nothing to do with planning the trip. One time in a class meeting where we had like a dozen people in the class, I had a guy say that. And what do you think happens after he makes that announcement?
Nobody asks questions.
Just shut up down like that. It's like nobody's participating. You better be coming up with some educated guesses to answer their questions, because their minds are going faster than you can talk, and there's just all kinds of related information that they have a need to know before they can participate in the process. And you did a great job of handling that too. Because, in fact, may I say this kindly, guys? she did a better job of handling your questions, of answering your questions, than you did helping her answer her questions. One question that I thought she really wanted to know was, is this trip going to be for a week or for 2 weeks? Didn't you?
You did? You never said that.
Indirectly, I did.
What, Esther?
I said indirectly, I did.
And did you guys help her decide whether it's a week or 2 weeks?
I think we asked, didn't we ask how long she was planning, and she said a week minimum?
How long would you like to have them there?
A minimum of a week.
Do you have a preference as to if you could have the best case scenario, how much time would they spend there at the
Forever?
orphanage? What?
Forever?
Yeah,
They
that
want
probably isn't
15
gonna
too.
happen. Because they're bringing
They
their
grow up.
teenagers over, right? They're bringing a group of
Okay.
teenagers
Right.
over. It's gonna cost some money to get them there, so you kinda want them there long enough to be productive.
Right.
2 weeks, does that sound like a good target date, target time? 3 weeks, is that too long?
I think it's very dependent on the group that is coming. Because if it's a group of seniors over the summer, maybe they want to make it a summer trip, you know, like a month long or more. But if it's a group of 15-year-olds, maybe a week is.
So it could be, you'll plan maybe not trying to have, you'll not try to have everyone come at once, but you'll try to have maybe a number of groups coming with different age groups for different time periods.
Yeah.
What in the world? Well, I'll just leave that one there and see if I have another one in here. I'll pick it up later.
But you're gonna lose it.
Oh, look at that. I have another pen in my pocket.
There's another pen on the floor.
Yeah, all the pieces are laying here somewhere. They'll show up eventually. I think there's one more somewhere. I don't know why it just all fell apart like that. And it's like, okay, so now, and that could have come out of the conversation, but you were so busy answering all their questions that were indirectly related
Sorry about that.
It's okay.
that you didn't get back to kind of nailing down. Okay, so we can maybe have maybe a 1 week trip with some of the younger kids, and maybe 2 or 3 week trip with some of the older kids who can really make more of a contribution and do some things. And then while they're there, let's see, what else was it you were wanting to nail down that they weren't helping you nail down?
Different activities. That they specifically
Activities. She kept asking about activities.
You don't know
And-
about what the orphanage
And
is like.
you guys just left her hanging out there. She came back to it 2 or 3 times.
But I didn't.
She says, what about activities? And then somebody asked about the weather.
Look, that is related. Because if you go during the rainy season, you can't do certain activities.
You can't pay for fences.
But what did you say about what did you say, Daniel, about activities that you weren't sure what she was thinking about when she said activities? Or how come you guys didn't help her come up with some activities?
I was trying to get more information on like what it was like there, so I could think of activities.
Oh, okay. So now, Esther, in light of what they just said, when you go to your discussion page to discuss your meeting, what will you be looking for on your discussion page? Some suggested activities. Now that they've got more information, they've had time to think about it, that you'll look for them to give you some suggested activities for them to be there. Somebody suggested doing some, did they suggest doing some one-on-one stuff with the kids? Does that sound like a good idea?
I think it's a good relationship builder, maybe even English training for the kids.
Maybe where you what my granddaughter had some students from school come to go with her little kids in her class when they went to the Museum of Science and Industry, because there's so many things to do there. Have any of you been to the Museum of Science and Industry? There's so many things to do there that she had one student from Calvary paired up with each of her little chippers in her classroom. Did you go on that trip?
Not on that trip, no. But
Okay, and can you imagine what happened? Here are all these little kids at the Museum of Science and Industry with tons of things to do, but if they have to stay with a group, it's no fun. But they have one one college student that's palling around with them, going wherever they want to do, spending as much time at each of the activities that they want to spend, and helping them see the whole place. And my granddaughter said it was a huge success because of, and can you see where with the orphanage, if there's some things that you wanted to do, that it'd be nice to have one person with each child doing something, would be a perfect opportunity to do some kind of activity like that. Maybe even some contest, like a little sack race,
yeah.
where one of the orphans gets paired up, or maybe even if they're small children, they're older kids from the States, maybe have it where the orphan gets to ride on the back of the person while they run a race or something, or they go through an obstacle course. Just some fun things to do. But I'm thinking, Daniel, were you thinking too about just some time to get to know the kids, to learn some things about them? And okay, here's an activity. I mean, just brainstorming here a little bit with you about it. Since you guys weren't doing a lot of brainstorming with Esther when she was asking this, and then you can put it up on our discussion page too, but just like, so what if we had each of the kids on the team paired up with an orphan and have them interview the orphan and ask what's your favorite color, what are your favorite things to do and stuff like that, to get to know them. And then the person on the team says, I want to tell you something about so-and-so, and they start standing up and talking about this orphan to the whole group. And can you see where some of the little orphans might be a little timid about sharing all that stuff about themselves? But here's some older person that's telling about their life and about some of their experiences for the whole group to hear. And that helps them get acquainted as well as does something. And again, you could probably go to the internet and just say activities for pairing up older or young adults with young children that do bonding kind of things, and that could be used for group activities. And you could probably find some of those on the internet too. Okay.
What age your children?
Yeah, that's right. But no matter what age they are, you could find out some information that was of interest to the kids, and then the older kids could talk about the kids and say, I just met a new friend and his name is whatever, and he's from here and he knows how to do this and that and something else, and his favorite color is and his favorite songs are, and things like that. That can really just make the little kids feel important that somebody's talking about them. Okay, what did you think of the meeting, Daniel?
Apparently, I was asking bad questions.
No, they weren't. Okay, wait a minute. Let's see this. Okay, Esther, did Daniel ask any bad questions?
Not bad questions, no.
They weren't bad questions. Did Daniel ask any bad questions?
No.
You can't think of one question he asked that was a bad question? I can't either. What were some bad questions you asked, Daniel?
Well, you came up and started out the conversation saying that we kind of went off track and that we're asking right questions. So,
That made them bad?
I guess so.
No, it didn't make them bad. Because they were you didn't answer what she wanted to get. You weren't giving her, but how was it related, did you say, Esther?
It was indirectly related.
It was indirectly related. It wasn't exactly what she was looking for, but did you guys have a need to know that information before you could help her answer the questions that she laid out there? So if you had a need to know that, then it couldn't be a bad question, could it? So what prompted you to choose that word to describe the questions? I mean, bad questions sounds like saying pop. They just weren't directly related. The questions you were asking weren't directly related to what she was trying to get at. But what she realized is that you needed to know that stuff. You need to have those indirectly related questions answered before you could answer the questions that she was looking for answers to. You got that, Daniel? So what kind of questions were you asking?
Indirect ones?
Indirectly related questions. Were they bad questions? Oh, do you think they were bad questions? Or do you think I thought they were bad questions?
I don't think they were bad questions.
Did I think they were bad questions? Yes, he thinks I thought they were bad questions. Even though I didn't think they were bad questions. Which means, no, it's a failure to communicate. Which means the words I chose to describe your indirectly related questions, when you heard those words, the thought you had was bad questions. When I'm thinking, no, they weren't bad questions, they weren't directly related to what she was trying to get help with. But they weren't bad questions. Does that help? Or do you still think, I don't care what he says? He thinks my question was a bad question, and he's not going to talk himself out of it. I've got this guy figured out. Well, what did that handout say? It just takes time. You just have to spend time. And now that I've made derogatory statements about Texas, it's a good thing we only have one more day of class. Because I thought since he wasn't a true blue, that he wasn't a born Texan, that he didn't have Texas ancestry, that his parents and his grandparents weren't born in Texas. I thought he wouldn't be as touchy about criticizing Texas, but I was wrong. I was wrong. That's right. That was a bad assumption, and there's the word bad. That was a bad assumption on my part, and I learned from that one. No more comments about Texas. It's a beautiful place. Yeah.
No more comments about
And the
it.
people are so friendly. They talk funny, but they're friendly. They're nice people, and the food is delicious. I mean, I can just tell you all kinds of good things about Texas.
You mean their chow?
Okay, so Daniel thought, no. I started to say Daniel thought that there were some bad questions asked, but Daniel didn't think that. Daniel thought that I thought there were some bad questions asked. But what Daniel really thought was that they were questions that needed to be answered before he could address the issues that you wanted. Is that right, Daniel? Am I right there? Okay, we're communicating now. We're on the same channel here. We're tuned into the same 88.5 thing. Okay, Talk, what did you think about the meeting?
Yeah, I kind of feel sorry about that, but so yeah, if we had more time, maybe the
Okay,
meeting,
go ahead and finish that.
yeah, the meeting is gonna be like more like beneficial, maybe. Yeah.
Okay, now, see, more time, and that's true. If we were gonna be here for 2 weeks instead of 1, then next week, you would have another meeting after they've had time to think about what they're gonna have their young people doing and bring some of their ideas to the next meeting. And what would be the agenda for that meeting?
Did you talk about those ideas?
The activities that we will have the young people doing while they're there. In other words, what you wanted to get from them today was more than they could give you on, is this a good phrase? On the spur of the moment. They needed some information. And that's what all their questions were about. I can't answer your question until I have some questions answered. They got their questions answered, and you answered their questions sufficiently, didn't she? You answered. Did she answer your questions sufficiently, Daniel? So well, yes and
Kinda
no.
lied about
No.
What
intentionally
question, Daniel, what question didn't you get answered sufficiently?
She had very educated guesses on some of them.
And you would rather have exact numbers or exact answers? So, for the questions where he wants more exactness, you'll have to get back to him at the next meeting, won't you?
Yes.
And give him the exact answers. Your educated guesses were her educated guesses good enough for you, Todd? But it wasn't good enough for Daniel. You gotta reach everybody in the group, don't you? So you say, so the next meeting, not only do I want to bring back more solid answers to some of Daniel's questions, but I want them to have time to think about some of what we could do for activities. Okay, so in that sense, we would need a follow-up meeting. That we won't have time to have. But you see, in real life, often the initial meeting ends up saying, it looks like we're gonna need to have another meeting to talk about this again another time. All right, I thought you handled things well. And I thought they were asking good questions. It's just they couldn't help you. They couldn't give you what you were really wanting because they needed those questions answered. And who would have thought that, I thought, who would have thought they would have all those questions about the orphanage? But they did, and I thought you handled it well in terms of giving them educated guesses and answering the questions, because that needed to proceed before you could get to where you wanted to go. But in light of all of the lack of help you got with your activity thing, you didn't let that derail you, because what did she ask for at the end? A motion that we do what? Now, her motion could have included a bunch of activities, couldn't it? But we couldn't get there. So her motion was, what was your motion?
To start planning this.
That we will have a trip and we'll start planning that trip. And what was the conclusion?
Let's go.
That they were all in favor of doing it. Even though that you didn't get what you wanted, you're still saying, well, it's like, can you guys see where she could walk away from the meeting and saying, I don't know if they want to go on this trip or not. But no, they do want to go on this trip. They just need some time to think about what kind of things our young people could be doing. And maybe even think about what could different age groups be doing? What kind of things, and what kind of activities would the orphanage like to have people doing. And of all those activities, maybe even check with the orphanage. If we brought a group over, what kind of things would be useful or helpful to what you're doing here? And then you could get some feedback from the orphanage in preparation for your next meeting. Because it's saying, you know, for some reason, they just didn't seem to have, they couldn't seem to reach down inside and find some activities that they would want to suggest. And you think, hey, that's the way it played out, that's the way we go. But I thought you handled it well, and then you'd come and say, okay, I guess we'll just have to have a second meeting. Okay, let's take a break.